So anyway, I am, I was going through the news today, and being a black man is always interesting because every day it just seems like in America you're gonna find at least a couple things that happen that kind of depress you, that kind of leave you a little bit angry, a little bit confused, maybe a lot confused, maybe a lot angry. Um, there's this story that I wanted you guys to know about. I think it's worth talking about. I think it's something that the country needs to know about. Um, there was an incident that occurred in New York City this week. I have to look at the exact date to see exactly when it happened, but either way, if you don't know about it, I think it's worth kind of talking about. And I have this perspective on it in that my father was a cop. Actually, my father was a cop for 20 something years. And so I got a chance to see things that a lot of people, period, don't see when it comes to cops. They don't get to see the good or the bad. So when I see people who think all cops are good, I say no, you're wrong. And when I see people who think all cops are bad, I say no, you're wrong. And a lot of that's just because basically, cops come like human beings. First of all, cops are human first. We know this. And with humanity comes a set of biases, preconceived notions about other people, mistakes, horrible mistakes, certain kinds of mental illness in some situations, all kinds of stuff. And so what I think is missing in the dialogue when we talk about cops is the fact that that they're when you talk about officers that are capable of doing good for other people, we can't talk as if that doesn't exist. Because it's a contradiction for us to be people who hate every cop out here, but we call the police when we need an officer to come and save our ass. I'm not. I personally wouldn't understand it. I mean, to me, if I hate all cops, I don't want cops around ever, right? For anything. If I get robbed, I ain't calling the police, or if somebody's, trying to hurt me, I don't call the cops. At the same time, what really bothers me is that, there are people out here who really believe cops can do no wrong, who really, sort of put them above everyone else in terms of just sort of getting this blank check in society, this sort of license to do whatever they want, to go to court, not even get indicted. I'm a cop. I rattle off my weapon, and as long as I murder poor people or black people, it's going to be overlooked. Because there are lots of examples of cops doing terrible things. There are examples of cops, that have sold drugs. There are cops out here that became dope dealers who were murdering other drug dealers and using their badge as a way to escape any sort of prosecution or any sort of even suspicion for what they did. So this road rage incident that I wanted you guys to know about, it was in New York, and I'm looking at the date of the articles up here on the Root. And the Root, the Root. The Root is a publication that is just marketed to black people, but it's not owned by black people. I think it's important to distinguish between black-owned media and media that's not owned by black people because as I was doing a podcast the other day with Damon Dash, or live webinar in our class that we teach at Intelligent Boss Moves, he said, Jewish people would never trust a publication that was owned by me, and I agree. I think that black people probably should not trust too many or have too much trust in publications that are not owned by black people. But here I am, I'm citing the Root, so maybe that's perceived to be a contradiction, but I think it's worthy of thinking about that because we're kind of trained to accept these contradictions. So I'll let you kind of do with this as you want. But anyway, the case involved Delron Small, who was with his girlfriend, their 4-month-old baby, and 2 daughters. And they were driving down the street in East New York, Brooklyn, or they were in Brooklyn, in East New York. And this was Monday morning, and their Nissan Altima was they were cut off by a Nissan Altima being driven by an off-duty police officer by the name of Wayne Isaacs. Ironically, Small and Isaacs are the same age. Both of them were 37 years old. So what happened was, according to police accounts, Small is the brother that was killed. They said he exited his Kia and was approaching Isaacs. They say that Small punched Isaacs twice. So the man who was killed hit the cop twice, and the cop pulled out his gun and shot him down and murdered him. Killed him. Right there on the street. Um, and so, but there was another witness who said that the cars almost hit each other, and that Small, the guy who was killed, got out of the car, and the cop just jumped out and started screaming at him. So, it looks like they're just sort of mixed accounts in terms of what happened. I think that all of us can sort of agree that road rage is not an excuse to murder somebody, right? Like, I mean, if I get on the freeway and you cut me off and I'm pissed off at you, what in the world would ever make me think that it would make any sense for me to pull out my gun and unload on you? Like, I wouldn't even. That's crazy to me. That's insanity. But what it speaks to even more deeply, if of course we have the very logical, very natural anger over what happened. This black man being killed by a police officer in a road rage kind of incident. But and I think that anger should be there. I think that there's a reason that people are angry at the police, and it's because police systems, the systems under which they operate, are generally corrupt. I just spent, in fact, yesterday I had dinner with Yurima Karama, who is a brilliant hip hop artist, but he also happens to be a brother who's a 23, 24 year veteran of our prison industrial complex, and I have a lot of respect for Yurima Karama because he used the prison as his university. He read hundreds and hundreds of books to kind of help him psychologically elevate above the torture and the racism and the slavery of the modern day prison system. And so one of the things that Yurima and I talk about a lot is that when people talk about the corruption of police, you can't really talk about that without talking about the corruption of the entire system itself, that's built on the enslavement and the destruction of black people, mostly black men. And so, you know, so I think the conversation about police corruption, the criminal justice system, prison torture, all of that's connected. It's all part of a lineage, all part of a line, right? It starts with stop and frisk, then it goes to the all-white jury that sends you away and gives you an extra long sentence. Then it goes into the torture that happens behind the wall, where when white people ain't nobody looking behind when you're behind the wall, where you're getting raped and beaten and tortured and mistreated and all these other things. They're extending your sentence because somebody attacked you and you fought back, things like that. And then you have that fourth stage, which is the lifelong marginalization, where a 2 or 3 year sentence turns into a life sentence because either your whole life. You're going through your whole life without the ability to find appropriate employment, and or you're going through life maybe with an AIDS diagnosis because somebody raped you in prison and nobody cares because you were a prison inmate. So anyway, with that being said, I think that one of the things that people overlook, or at least those naive people who think all police officers are good, is they overlook the fact that there are a lot of police officers who are just flat out crazy. I believe that police, that the police application process draws an extraordinarily large number of people who have severe mental illness, who maybe have a little man's complex, or who are abusive people and want to get their hands on a gun, or who want that power so they can abuse and mistreat other people. And I don't really get a sense that their psychiatric tests are really able to identify all of these people. And then also you have a fundamentally flawed system where when officers are called to the carpet, when somebody is filing complaints on them, the complaints get ignored, all for the sake of kind of protecting the blue wall of silence. And in addition to that, officers kind of understand who and where they can get away with their most brutal behavior. They kind of know, like, look, if I go out here and I beat up the senator's son, then I'm gonna get called to the carpet. But if I beat up that nigga downtown who ain't got no money, who already got a criminal record, ain't nobody gonna say nothing. The white jury won't even indict me. I mean, the thing is, it's crazy that if you look at the judicial system, an indictment is a very low standard of justice. It doesn't take much to get an indictment, right? You could be indicted a lot of times if you didn't do anything at all. Cops don't even get indicted. They don't even indict cops. So really, a lot of cops, not all of them, a lot of them have immunity in the criminal justice system. They don't. They're above prosecution, and so again though, it's a mixed feeling for me because again, I knew a lot of cops. I saw a lot of police work, good and bad. I saw some of the most atrocious things you can imagine, and I saw some of the most heroic activity you can imagine. I've seen cops lose their lives trying to save somebody they didn't even know. I've seen cops care about people's problems that they didn't even have to care about. So I can't go through life in good conscience and agree with anybody who says every cop is horrible, every cop should be killed, etc. I can't, especially if the same person is going to call the police when you have a problem. But at the same time, what you're really seeing, in my opinion, and I've heard cops kind of describe it this way, and I agree, that they're kind of like soldiers that are following certain orders given by a system that is bigger than they are. I've heard cops tell me that, look, we knew the drugs would come in on the big ship, at this side of the city, but we weren't allowed to go over on that ship and stop the kingpin, stop the big shipments. We were told to go to the hood and arrest the dope boys on the corner. And we knew that was stupid, but we did it anyway. And of course, the white cops are happy because they get to lock, in their minds, they're like, we're locking niggas up today, making the world better, in at least according to our paychecks, because we're making extra money for every single person we lock up, every single time we appear in court, all these other things, getting promotions based on the number of arrests as opposed to our ability to actually solve real crimes. So the drug thing, the whole war on drugs and mass incarceration, which I consider to be the fourth Holocaust committed against black people in America, at least the fourth. First was the Middle Passage. Second was slavery itself. Third was Jim Crow. Fourth was the mass incarceration epidemic. But really, there are other Holocausts that we don't even know about, that we don't even talk about. And if you think about it, you compare the 6-7 year Nazi Holocaust that occurred against the Jewish people. You can't compare that to 150 years of the Holocaust that was committed against black people. It's no comparison. I mean, 250 years versus 6 years. You can't compare the two. So I think that it's interesting. It's an artifact of a racist society that we're even taught to believe that one is equivalent to the other. They ain't equivalent. What black people have gone through is uniquely abusive and uniquely traumatic. And in fact, the trauma continues. Every single day, these white people you trying to go run out and vote for, the Hillarys and the Trumps, every single day that these people refuse to acknowledge what you've gone through, that only deepens the insult. That's another Holocaust that they're simply telling you. Oh, it's almost like telling a rape victim that they was brutally gang raped, for 3 or 4 weeks straight. That okay, we stopped raping you now. You should be okay. So stop your bitching. Stop asking for prosecution. Stop asking for compensation. Stop asking for therapy, because the past is the past. And even though you're sitting there and your body's still bruised and injured from what was done to you, you need to just get over it. That's pretty much what you're kind of being told by these politicians you voting for. That's why I can't get excited when I hear Negroes trying to get me pumped up for Hillary Clinton. I want to give them the finger. I'm like, you and Hillary Clinton can both, kiss my ass. So it is, so anyway, let me jump in, because I know some of y'all might actually love Hillary Clinton. I ain't trying to offend you, but I'm just telling you that there's really nothing about any of these politicians that shows me that they care a whole lot about you or us or our people or anything. So anyway, moving on. I would say that, in this particular case, what I really see is a scenario that's really interesting to me. I mean, there's so many thoughts that go through my head. One about just guns in general. I really think, in terms of democratic efforts for gun control, they're important because, you see, when you have a gun nearby and you get angry, then it's easy in the heat of that moment to want to pick up that gun and start blasting on somebody, right? And then next thing you know, you're doing life in prison over a really bad moment, a really bad 3 minutes, right? In fact, I've seen people, and then when you throw drugs and alcohol into the mix, it gets real messy, because I've seen people ruin their lives over, they hit the weed, and maybe something's in the weed, because the weed today will kill you. Like Farrakhan talked about that. He said the weed today ain't like the weed they smoked back in the day. And I saw a story about a young brother who took one hit on a joint and it was laced. And he went on that day he went on a robbing and killing spree that he did not even remember. He carjacked people, smacked a girl in the face, shot and murdered somebody, and it was doing life in prison over something that he didn't even remember doing. He was 19 years old, just a kid. So you throw in, drugs and alcohol mixed with a weapon nearby. That's just an ugly combination. That's an ugly situation. And I think that a lot of people are not warned about that, black, white, or otherwise, because we know it ain't just black people. We know white people drink. I mean, I don't understand why white people drink so much. They really love liquor. I think that's a part of their culture. They need to deal with that whole liquor problem, that meth problem, that heroin problem. Y'all got some problems. Y'all got some stuff going on in your culture that's like really fucked up. Excuse my French. And so, but at the same time, if I'm talking about black folks, we got things we got to fix as well. And so I think that, when you talk about guns and having a gun and the availability of weapons, I personally wouldn't want to have a gun on me all the time. Maybe I'd want some sort of weapon that didn't, commit deadly force, right? Maybe a taser, maybe some pepper spray, maybe something else that's gonna, maybe a gun, a BB gun that I could pull out that looks like a real gun, where I could just be like, what's up, and I don't know I don't know how that sounds, people, but I really think that having deadly force around you, especially if you don't have a keen ability to control your emotions, can cause you a lifetime of regret. Now, with this case, in the case you just checked in, we're talking about the shooting in New York of Mr. Delron Small. Delron Small was shot down by a cop, murdered, killed, shot down, whichever terminology you want to use, by Wayne Isaacs after a road rage incident in which Isaacs cut him off, and they got out of the car, started arguing. Next thing you know, this off-duty cop, Isaacs, pulls out his gun and pops and shoots his brother down. And I think it's and what's really tragic about this story to me is that his children were watching this. I can't imagine being a child in the back seat of the car and seeing my daddy get shot down. I mean, that would just I couldn't I could never put aside a memory like that. I could never overcome that. I would need decades of therapy, I'm sure. And so I really want to give my condolences to him and his family. And I think also, with this cop, I'm real curious to see what's going to happen to him. I know that the NYPD is already saying, we want to investigate, and he's going to have to explain what happened, but that might just be some grandstanding or whatever, and it'll be interesting to see how they respond. Because in this situation, I mean, it's if it happens, if anybody else does that, if I do that, my punishment, we know my punishment will be severe. I couldn't imagine getting out of the car, being mad because somebody cut me off or whatever, and popping somebody and killing them and not expecting that I'm gonna go to prison. I'd be distressed, like, oh my God, what did I just do? So given that a cop, given that we would expect a cop to receive a lesser penalty for that same crime, and that's kind of what we expect because people don't really indict cops like that. That's a fundamental problem in our society. I mean, cops should actually get greater penalties in some situations because cops are expected to be able to hold to a higher standard. But the reality is that many cops are mentally ill. Some of it because it's what they call an economic self-selection. Some of them applied to be cops because they were crazy. They applied to be cops because they know that, look, if I'm a cop, I got a gun and a badge. I can beat my wife, and the cops won't even come to the house. Like, I can threaten it. You have no idea how many cops have actually, come close to murdering their spouses or actually done it and got away with it because the boys in blue stick by each other. So part of it's self-selection. Part of it is just the nature of the job. I do believe that that due to what cops see every day, due to what they endure, many of them have a hard time maintaining balance that way as well. I've seen I'll tell you this interesting story. Actually, before I forget, I want to tell you guys this too. In case you didn't get a free copy of my book, or you can get a free e-copy of my book, It Takes a Village to Raise the Bar. I want you to write down this URL. It's drboycewatkins.net. go to drboycewatkins.net and sign up, and you get a free e-copy of my book, It Takes a Village to Raise the Bar. I just want to make sure you guys knew this. So anyway, and also if you have a second, hit the share button and share this to your feed if you think this conversation is something other people will want to join into, because I think it's worth talking about. So just hit the share button, share it on your feed. I'd appreciate that very much. Okay, so I knew a cop who was actually with the LAPD, and this brother, he was a good brother. He was a Latino brother, and one of the things that was real interesting was he was actually fighting against police brutality. He's one of the good guys. You know, he's actually one of the people that is that's out here. You know, he was going to Ferguson, taking a stand in Ferguson and against what the police were doing there, doing all kinds of good stuff for the world. And I remember, you know, he gave me his story in terms of telling me how he became the person he is today. He said, actually, I used to be the opposite. He said, I used to be one of those kick-ass, corrupt cops. He said, I wasn't always like that. He said, my experiences turned me into a different person where I needed counseling and I didn't receive appropriate help. And my reaction was I began to become very brutal. And so what happened to him was this, and anybody who's open-minded, I want you to hear this story without sort of coming in with all of our preconceived biases about, you know, what we think every cop is thinking. I think that leads to it leads to the wrong conversation sometimes, because I don't think we know what every cop is thinking, just like cops don't know what every black person is thinking. That, you know, I think that they look at us and they say, okay, this nigga's trying to kill me, or he's probably thinking about getting high and smoking a blunt, or he's probably out here selling dope because he wants to destroy the world, when really he might be selling dope because he's trying to get money for his mama to pay for her cancer treatments, right? So going back to this, you know, he said, look, I didn't want to hurt anybody as a cop. I wanted to do good for the world. I became a cop because I want to serve and protect. There are officers who want to serve and protect. Let's stop pretending like there are not any officers who don't want to serve and protect. And so what he said was, he said, one time I got in a situation where I was driving to, I think he said he was driving to a wedding to get a tuxedo. He was off duty, and he saw a guy, another Latino brother. He was Latino. He saw another guy that was Latino who was beating up his girlfriend. So he pulls over, you know, as a cop would do. He pulls over and grabs the guy, you know, and he pulls, you know, he's basically about to arrest this guy for beating the hell out of his girlfriend right there in front of everybody. And so suddenly, he said he's surrounded by these other people that, you know, that these gang members basically that are like, you know, we're about to mess you up. And so he has his gun out and he's like, back up, you know, because they're about to, you know, do serious harm to him. And he said that they were like, well, you can't shoot all of us. And he was thinking to himself, like, I don't even want to pull this trigger because he said, I don't want to. Now, again, this was a good guy telling me this story. I really believe everything. I believe what he was telling me. He said, I didn't want to pull the trigger because I didn't want to deal with all the implications that come from a Latino man killing another Latino. He said people wouldn't understand. He said, I don't want to be accused of hating my own community, all these things. So he kind of, you know, he froze up and he was like, I just didn't want to pull that trigger. He said, next thing he knew, he got ran over by a car. One of the other guys drove up and ran him over with a car. And these guys then beat the hell out of him, stole his car, stole his gun, and left him for dead, right? So he goes back to the LAPD, or I think he was with the LAPD. And the other cops are basically saying, you see, that's why we squeeze first. That's why we shoot first. Because if you don't, if you go out here and you're weak, they're going to take you out and care nothing about you, right? So he, again, which isn't totally true all the time, but that their mindset was one based on warfare. Like, you're dealing with gangbangers or whatever, you at war. Ain't nobody gonna feel sorry for you. So what he did was, he said, I adopted a mindset where I was like, it's war now. Like, I'm not, if I go out here and I'm too soft, I'm gonna get my brains blown out. I'm not coming home that day. I'm gonna end up dead. And so he became an ass-kicking cop. He killed a couple people, did all kinds of stuff. And he said that also at the same time, the department didn't give him proper therapy, you know, when he was going through all of this. So you compound that with the fact that, so he needed treatment. He wasn't really getting the treatment he needed. He'd gone through this traumatic experience. He was reacting the wrong way. and suddenly he becomes this horribly abusive cop. And he said that's why he left the force, because he didn't like the person he had become. So he went and got real therapy after he quit the police force, and then suddenly he became an advocate against police brutality. So that was actually a really, I thought, uh, really thorough explanation of what might go through the minds of some cops, not all, some, in a way to kind of help us understand the dynamic of the problem. It doesn't mean that police brutality is not an issue, though. And that was the thing. That's why he fought against it. That's why he was out there trying to get cops prosecuted for doing the wrong things. But he said some of these guys are mentally ill because of what they've seen or what they've experienced or whatever. So again, I think that, just sort of perceiving the mindset of an officer as a person who gets up every day saying, I'm gonna go out here and I'm gonna kick ass, I'm always the dominant one. That might apply in some cases, but there are also cases where the officer's like, kill or be killed. Every day, I'm dealing with criminals every day. I'm dealing with people every day that want to hurt me, that hate me, and don't want me to come home that night to my family for dinner. And so I think that ends up creating a very unhealthy scenario, which is why I agree with Minister Farrakhan. Last time I had dinner at Minister Farrakhan's house, his son, I can't remember which son it was, but his son mentioned that he thinks that black people should have access to our own resources so that we can actually police our own community, so that we can have cops that live in that neighborhood. You know what, Dwayne, you're saying, please stop saying some. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you said many is the same as some. You say many officers are abusive and liars. I agree. I saw it up close. I've seen it a lot. So many is the same as some. Basically, we're both saying not all. So whether it's some or it's many, it's not all, right? So not all cops want to kill everybody. Not all cops are good people. That's what I think we can agree on, Dwayne. So I think that if we really want to have a meaningful conversation about this, we got to try to understand. Now, the only way I think we can get away from any of that is if we just decide we'll never call the police for anything. We don't want the cops ever in our neighborhood for any reason. So if another black person rolls up with a gun and is ready to kill us, I got to deal with that myself. I got to find a way to get the gun away from him and fight him back, or call my boys to handle this. I can't call the police. Now, if we get to that point, then absolutely, then we can reject everything entirely. But I don't know necessarily what the answer to that might be. But what I will say is that I agree with Farrakhan, who said that black people should be able to police their own communities. One of the big problems with both the police force as well as the school system is that you have people from outside of the community who have this extraordinary authority in black communities. So you got the white teacher from the suburbs who's coming in teaching a school full of black kids. That ain't right. That don't make no sense. The teacher ain't gonna really care that much about these kids, because every day she gets to go home to the suburbs. She doesn't see the long-term implications of her actions or the way she teaches, right? The cop. Why would you have a cop from the suburbs coming into the hood trying to police the hood? He's not going to be an involved citizen that has skin in the game. He's going to be a soldier that's there to occupy a community, right? That's it. When American soldiers go to Fallujah or some shit, somewhere across the world, they're not stakeholders in that community. So they don't know the long-term implications of the choices that they make and their actions, right? So the same thing is true with white officers coming in from the suburbs to black communities. You don't understand the people you're dealing with. They don't know you. You don't know them. So there's an environment built on mistrust and fear. You're afraid of them. They're afraid of you. What kind of progress is going to be made with that? Trust is everything. So I think that if you have community policing, true community policing to me means having people that are right there from that community. If you're a cop and you live on the corner and everybody knows where you live at, you're going to think twice before you beat up somebody's grandma over something small because she was jaywalking. You're gonna realize, wait, this is Big Mama. Everybody loves Big Mama. And if I beat up Big Mama, I'm going to become the pariah of this community. So I'm going to show respect to Big Mama because she deserves it. She's been in this community for 30 years. That's what a cop in the community would do. But a cop from outside the community is going to take grandma, slam her to the ground, beat the hell out of her, and not even care because he's going to go home to the suburbs that day. So I think that's what we need. So anyway, if you just tuned in, we're basically talking about the unfortunate tragedy that occurred in New York, where Mr. Delron Small was killed in front of his kids by an off-duty police officer by the name of Wayne Isaacs in a road rage accident. I mean, Isaacs cut him off, and Delron got upset Next thing you know, Isaacs pulls out the gun and kills the poor guy right there in front of everybody. Is police brutality a worthy fight? I mean, absolutely. I personally just think that we have to take that brutality fight and extend that, just add to that, keep on with that fight. But remember, don't sort of fight things in a vacuum or in a microcosmic framework or in a way where you're only focused on a piece of the puzzle. Understand that police brutality is the beginning of a chain of events that occurs that affects so many people, that affects our families and communities. So the chain of events starts with Pookie getting pulled over unjustly. He gets stopped unjustly, stop and frisk, stuff like that. That right there is the first violation. Then he's going to be taken to jail and told the only way he can fight the charge is if he gets a one of these $200-$300 an hour lawyers, which is another injustice. Third, Pookie's going to sit in jail with hardened criminals who might hurt him, in addition to the prison guards who might hurt him. So ain't no telling what can happen to that poor boy by spending 2 or 3 days in jail. People should not be afraid to spend 2 or 3 days in jail. They should be afraid of losing their freedom. That's it. They shouldn't be afraid of being beaten or raped or tortured. That part that's specifically designed. That's specifically made in America. So that's the third injustice. The next injustice is Pookie's going to have his public defender and be thrown in front of an all-white jury. So that's injustice number 4. So this all-white jury that's statistically proven on every level to give harsher crimes for the same sentences to black people than they do for whites. They attack black men, they protect white women. Not that white women can't go to prison too, and not that black men can't be exonerated, but the data pretty much show beyond any reasonable doubt that black people are treated differently by this system. Everybody sees it. Americans see it, but we just kind of see it as that's just the way things are done. That's business as usual in America. So that's the fourth injustice. The next injustice occurs when he's sent away to prison and he's given a longer sentence than white people would receive. And while he's there, horrible things happen. He doesn't get sent away to learn a lesson or to be made into a better person or to be rehabilitated or put in educational programs. He's sent away to be, once again, even worse than the county jail, beaten, raped, and tortured for a number of years in a hostile environment where he could be killed every single day, and his sentence can be extended several years for minor reasons. If somebody attacks him, he fights back. He gets in trouble for fighting. Next thing you know, he's in prison for even longer amounts of time, right? He's being humiliated, emasculated. In many cases, these guys are forced into homosexuality, which in many cases leads to STD infections and things like that. So when these men come home, they're having sex with black women. Black women therefore become the highest group of infected human beings in America, right? It's all connected. It's all connected. And so what's the next injustice? The next injustice is when he gets out. When he gets out, does he get to come home and sort of reestablish his life and sort of be put in a position where he can be an asset to society? No, he's not. He's told he can't get jobs for life. He's told he can't live certain places. He's told he can't go to school. There are lots of professions where he can't even get a professional license. So what the hell do you expect him to do, right? You're just throwing him out there and just leaving him to the wolves, right? And so ultimately recidivism becomes very high. Why is recidivism very high? Well, because they want you back in prison because of the next injustice. I think I'm on number 5 or 6. I've done lost count of all the ways that this system screws black people. The next injustice, which I didn't actually mention as part of the system, so I'm going to circle back, is the fact that while he's in prison, he's working a job, a $30 an hour job, and receiving 10 cents an hour because America is one of the countries that is the first in line to promote slavery. We are not a country that used to legalize slavery. We are a country that currently legalizes slavery. And the reason that you don't see it is because you believe that if someone is a criminal, that they deserve whatever they get. That while they're there, and again, maybe this is the 7th injustice, while they're there, we can charge them all kinds of crazy money for phone calls and charge them $1 per email and milk the hell out of these poor families. That's injustice number 7. I'm losing count now. You believe that while he's in prison, he can be raped and tortured and beaten. That's the price of cheating on your taxes, or that's the price of getting caught with a few ounces of weed, or that's the cost of doing something that white kids do on college campuses every weekend but never get sent to prison for. You think that because he did something wrong, because he made a mistake, that he deserves whatever he gets. So you don't care how long he's being tortured. You don't care that he got 90 years for minor drug possession in the 1980s. You don't care. You don't believe that he has any human rights. You don't care that he's working a $30 an hour job for 10 cents an hour. And that's why you don't understand that slavery is legal in America. You think America is a country that used to legalize slavery. America is not a country that used to legalize slavery. America is a country that still profits from slavery, probably as much or more so than it did back in 1805. I don't know. I got to go look at the exact numbers. But I will tell you what, the prison industrial complex is a hell of a moneymaker. I'd be willing to bet you that we make as much, if not more money with prisons as we did with those cotton gins and all this other stuff. If not, it's probably pretty close. So, when you talk about injustice for black folks, what we got to do is really make sure. I mean, if we care about the justice, maybe you don't even care. Maybe it's not your fight. Because that's the thing. People think that if you get that label of criminal, that you're automatically a bad person. and people don't understand how flexible that label is. Like, if you don't understand history, do you understand that historically, countries that wanted more prison inmates simply changed the laws and said, "Oh, if we just make it illegal to farm on Tuesdays, then we can send more people to prison." They had quotas. Because they were making money from it. Joseph Stalin industrialized Russia by sending quotas to the villages, saying, "I don't care what you arrest people for, just arrest a certain number, and I need you to send so many people to the work camps every month." So that label is arbitrary. The reason I love that show, Orange is the New Black. And the reason I like that show, it was done by a liberal white woman. And liberals irritate me as much as conservatives do half the time. Liberals can be very paternalistic and just annoying, and they expect us to adopt every agenda that they put on the table, and I'm not a fan of that. But one thing I will give them credit for is on the show Orange is the New Black. What I love about that show is very simple. They humanize prison inmates. They let you know that they're not these sort of just these beings in orange suits. They're not, they're not numbers. They weren't always inmate number 67454. They were people like you. And they probably lived lives just like you. Many of them just did something illegal, probably not much worse than something you've done, but maybe never got caught doing. And so I like that. They show the stories of inmates before they went to prison, when they were treated as real human beings, to kind of help you understand the connection there, and to just kind of understand that one simple idea in the justice system will fix everything. And this is what you should aim for, in my opinion. The punishment should fit the crime. That's it. It's not a question of whether you're a good person or a bad person. It's whether the punishment fits the crime. For black people, the punishment does not usually fit the crime. We get this much punishment for this much crime. And if you only look at it in a very simple-minded framework that says either you're a good person or you're a bad person, if you didn't want to go through that, then you shouldn't have broke the law. That's stupid. And the reason that that's crazy is because I could come to you and I could say something stupid like this. I could say, I have a daughter and she's 9 years old, and sometimes she doesn't do her homework, and it really makes me mad. And you say, wow, that is bad. And I say, yeah, so do you agree that children should do their homework? And you say, absolutely. And I would say, do you agree that children should be punished if they don't do their homework? You say, of course they should. And so you're thinking maybe I would ground her or something like that. So what if I said to you, well, every time my daughter don't do her homework, I punch her in the face and I throw her down the steps, right? Because and you say, well, wait a minute, Boyce, that's too much. You shouldn't do that to your own child. And what if I turned around and said something stupid like, well, I mean, but didn't you just tell me that she should be doing her homework, that she should be punished for not doing her homework? So I kick her little ass down the steps. That'll make her do her homework. If anything, I mean, if she didn't want to get kicked down the steps, she should have did her homework, right? That's how stupid we sound when we think that somebody deserves to be raped, beaten, and tortured because they broke the law. Right? Because the other thing you got to understand is that law is arbitrary and legality is not the same as morality. So there were lots of things that have always been legal in America that were not good things, and things that have been illegal in America that were actually the right thing to do. Dr. Martin Luther King was a criminal, right? Malcolm X was a criminal. A lot of people that we love were criminals. So let's stop sort of buying into these ideas and start using some damn common sense. That's it. The justice system just has no common sense. That's the problem. That's why when I was in Kentucky fighting on behalf of Judge Olu Stevens, who stood up against all white juries, they wanted to hang this brother out to dry because he simply said something very logical, that a city that has this many black people should not have its citizens sent away to prisons by all white juries. That doesn't make any sense, especially the west end of Louisville. Anybody knows the west end of Louisville, Kentucky, where Judge Olu Stevens is from, the west end of Louisville is full of black people. So there shouldn't be any white people on some of these juries. None. Because if you're being judged by a jury of your peers, then for black people, most of our peers are other black people. The people who understand us are other black people. White folks don't understand us at all, not as a collective. Some of the stuff white people say about black people makes me think that they must live on another planet because they do not understand us. Sometimes we don't understand them, but we know more about them than they know about us because we understand, or we have somehow adopted this cultural assimilation as the key to our survival. So we feel like we got to understand white folks because we out here begging white people for jobs. That's why I tell black people, let's stop begging white folks for jobs, because we keep doing that, we're always going to be vulnerable. So anyway, before I let you go, one thing I want to remind you, go to drboycewatkins.net. You can get a free e-copy of my book, It Takes a Village to Raise the Bar, A New Paradigm for Black America. Go to drboycewatkins.net. Also, I actually have this really cool class on motivation, goal setting, overcoming obstacles, time management. People love it. It's called Black Keys to Greatness, and it's at blackkeystogreatness.com. The first month is free. Go to blackkeystogreatness.com. Write that down. Check it out. I think you're going to love it. And if you don't like it, you can get your money back, but there won't be any money that you have to pay because the first month is free. So anyway, I'm about to get on out of here. I agree, DeAndre. You said we need to create our own jobs. Absolutely. Stop thinking that black people can't create their own jobs. Stop thinking that you need white people to survive. White people don't feel like they need you to survive. White people feel very comfortable knowing they can create their own jobs. So we need to have the same mentality, period. Stop thinking that they can do stuff that you can't do. That's not true. You're just as capable. In fact, you are the survivors of the Middle Passage, which probably means in some people's eyes, you might even be superior. But I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to go ahead and let you make of that what you want. All right, guys. I'll talk to you guys soon, and please have a wonderful day. Take care. Peace.